Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here. This is our very first ever episode ever here on the Real Takes podcast, which is going to be my sports podcast talking about all the major sporting events going on around the world in real time. Currently watching the NBA Finals Game 1 featuring the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Indiana Pacers. But we won't just be covering just NBA. Like I just said, we'll be covering all major sports around the world, which excites me because I hope a lot of you who will be watching this podcast in the future are big sports fanatics, just like I am. I love sports. I watch it every day, but lately my main focus has been on tennis. Tennis has been a sport that I've followed for the last few years, but this year it's taken new heights where I followed it every week. So overall, I've enjoyed watching every week of all these new tournaments. Specifically, right now we have Roland Garros that's occurring. We are in the semifinals of for men's, and today we just confirmed who will be playing in the finals for women's, which will be featuring Arena Sabalenka versus Coco Gauff, and that should be a fun one to watch. I'm very excited for it. Unfortunately, I will be working during the match, but I'll try my best to keep up with it live on HBO Max on my phone. But I would definitely will be watching the men's final on Sunday, and I actually will be watching both semifinals matches tomorrow, which will feature Carlos Alcaraz versus Lorenzo Musetti. And then at 1 o'clock local time here, obviously it will be 7 o'clock local time over there in France. It will be Yannick Sinner versus Novak Djokovic. And I think we will start off this podcast, episode one, talking about Roland Garros since it's been the sport that I have been following for the last few years, but specifically this year, it's been the main sport I've been following. Overall, this tournament has had a lot of surprises. I remember going into the tournament, we had the clay swing started off with Monte Carlo, and then you had these 500 level tournaments with in Barcelona, in Germany, and now you have all these other tournaments with Madrid and Rome, the two major Master 1000 swing tournaments leading up to Roland Garros. And some of my surprises this season that I would say from the clay swing was Jack Draper being a player who's ascended and showing that he can be a versatile player. He's known for his hard court and grass ability, but this season he's really shown his potential on clay. He made it to the finals of the Madrid Open against Casper Ruud, and Casper was able to take away the title to win his first ever ATP Masters 1000 title. And it's been a very inconsistent clay season for most of the top clay players this season because, as I just mentioned, Casper, he was one of those top contending players going into the clay season, but I'd expected him to really make a good run at Roland Garros, just considering the fact that he won that title in Madrid, and next thing you know, he was, dealing with an injury, but unfortunately, that took away a little bit of the excitement because in these tournaments, you want these top players to be making good runs for those high competitive matches in those later stages. Another player that really caught me by surprise with his inconsistency on clay was Stefanos Tsitsipas. That was a player that I had high expectations going into the clay swing. He did do okay in Monte Carlo, but had a rough match against Lorenzo Musetti, who picked up his first ever win against him. And next thing you know, Lorenzo was able to have another win against him. And then I think his rhythm, Stefanos' rhythm throughout the clay season was just very different compared to these past few years where he's made some deep runs in all of the clay tournaments. So those were the two players that caught me by surprise. Another player that I will say that lived up to his expectation was Carlos Alcaraz. I mean, that guy, considering his skill sets, the amount of achievements he's accomplished already for his age, it's just incredible. Him having the ability to live up to the moment and playing in those high level situations. Playing in Italy in the Rome final against Yannick Sinner in front of his home crowd, in front of Yannick Sinner's home crowd, and then putting on a masterful performance. I mean, no one expected anything less from him. I'm sure he showed up to that match knowing that he had to give it his 100%. But I will say, considering how Sinner came back and was playing pretty good for the most part for a guy who just served his 3 months of suspension for doping. I would say that he did overachieve a little bit, but I think he's still a little bit of a work in progress on clay, even though he has made some deep runs in these clay tournaments. Last year, he made semifinals at Roland Garros, so that was a sign of positive things to come for later years, especially this year since he made the final in Rome, and now he's in the semifinals against Novak Djokovic in tomorrow's epic battle. So, overall, I would say my predictions for tomorrow's semifinals matches, I would say I have Carlos Alcaraz winning tomorrow against Lorenzo Musetti. Lorenzo has been one of those players who's really shown out in the clay swing. He's only lost, I believe, 3 matches. Let me double check that for you guys right now. But it's been an incredible run for him. He made the finals in Monte Carlo. He had a really good run in Rome. And overall, he's been one of the most consistent players, I would say, right behind Alcaraz on the clay swing. Overall, I think it will be still a lot to overcome for Musetti tomorrow because Alcaraz is the defending champion at Roland Garros. So my prediction is Alcaraz will win that. And I will say about 4 sets just because Alcaraz has been dropping a few sets in his few earlier matches. So, and I can give Lorenzo Musetti enough credit to take a set off Alcaraz if Alcaraz starts to lose a little bit of focus and his level just temporarily dips in one of those sets. But I expect Carlos Alcaraz to come out with the win tomorrow and advance to his, I believe, his second straight year. Yeah, second straight year. I just said defending champion. Yeah, second straight year at Roland Garros. So that will be something good for him. And yeah, as I see right here, Musetti has won 19 matches this year on the clay and lost 3. So he has had a very good record, which is sensational. And I think no matter what happens tomorrow, he can go into the grass season with really good confidence and good expectations since he did make the Wimbledon semifinals last year against Novak Djokovic. So I think this year he's proven that he can be a top 10 player. And I believe he will be a player that continues to achieve more and more as the years go by. I think there are a few people that he still needs to prove that he can beat. I would say those 2 players are obviously Alcaraz and Djokovic. If I had to throw in another name in there, I mean, I would say maybe center, just be only from my perspective, just because I've never seen personally Musetti face center. I don't know if they have faced each other before. I will have to double check that for you guys. I will check that out right now just so we can fill in those little questions of what people may have. But overall, Musetti has shown that he is a top talent. So we do have actually a history of matches between Sinner and Musetti. So they have played each other 2 times, and one of them was a walkover. So Sinner has beaten Musetti twice in those full matches, and then Musetti did take the walkover. This was in 2023. So yeah, I would say that would be another opponent that maybe Musetti has to prove that he can beat to achieve that top level and potentially can compete for titles. And now moving on to the primetime match, the match that I'm sure a lot of people are excited for. I mean, you have the greatest tennis player of all time, 24-time Grand Slam champion, 100-time ATP Tour champion, Novak Djokovic. The Serbian has just performed at a high level. And no surprise to me personally, I knew that after his run in Geneva that he would come into this tournament with good hopes and good confidence, having put that burden of trying to win his 100th title behind him. I would say that that has lifted his level so much, knowing how to perform in those high pressure situations. Because for people who did watch that match, for people who didn't, I will say that he was down a break in that third set against Herkaz. I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, but he was down a break in that third set and he was almost on the brink of losing. So for him to up his level in that last set and to break back and just to stay in that match and find a way to get the win, I think those are very high level, high pressure moments that you can expect from him. And I would say a lot of people still had their doubts yesterday when he went up against Alexander Zverev 2 days ago. I mean, actually, no, yesterday. This was yesterday. I'm feeling like we're moving fast here, but yeah, no, this match was just yesterday. It's just yeah, crazy how time goes by so fast. But yeah, everyone thought that Zavera was going to give Djokovic a tough challenge. I mean, I did say that Djokovic would win in 4 sets, mainly because I know that Zverev made the finals there last year, so I can't discredit him. And considering the fact that he has won a good amount of matches on clay, and also considering the fact that Djokovic hasn't faced a top 10 player yet in the clay swing, especially in Geneva and at Roland Garros. So this was going to be a little bit of a revealing factor, but I still believe that Djokovic was playing so much better compared to Zverev. So I wasn't surprised that Djokovic won. And I believe like on the betting odds for people who were into sports betting, they had that match 50-50, minus 110 for Djokovic, minus 110 for Zverev. So a lot of people believed that it was going to be a 5-set match, which I don't blame them, considering the fact that, like I said, Zverev is a finalist there, and he's had a good run at Roland Garros before, and Djokovic having not faced high-level opponents yet so far on the clay swing. But I think yesterday revealed that Djokovic is ready to, you know, take his level up a notch. And next thing you know, he's facing Yannick Sinner. That's the match I'm personally looking forward to the most. And in my prediction, honestly, for this match, just because I'm a big Djokovic fan, I will say that I know this match is going to be difficult. Yannick Sinner is the number one player in the world right now, regardless of his little bit of controversy with his doping and the suspension he served after the Australian Open. I will have to go with Djokovic in 5. I will say I can't ignore the fact that Djokovic is unbeaten at Roland Garros since 2022, and France in general, because he did win the Paris Masters back in the fall of 2023. So ever since 2022, Djokovic has had a sensational resume at Roland Garros in France in general, having winning the gold medal against Carlos Alcaraz last summer at the Paris Olympics in an amazing match. Both sets going to 2 tie breaks, and next thing you know, Djokovic left it all out just to get that gold medal that he was seeking for years and years. So I think people can't doubt Djokovic just yet. He's proven that he can still compete at a high level, even this year, just because he lost his first few matches during the clay swing doesn't mean that he can, you know, that doesn't mean that he still cannot perform at a high level. I'm pretty sure he still can. He proved it against Alcaraz in Australia in the quarterfinals. And I do believe that if he didn't get injured against Alcaraz, he would have beaten Zverev and gone on to face Yannick Sinner in the final, where I think that could have gone either way because Djokovic has an incredible history, 10-time champion in Australia. So I think people should learn by now that you can't count out Novak Djokovic. So those are my 2 predictions for the semifinals for the men's side of Roland Garros. Carlos Alcaraz in 4 sets, Novak Djokovic in 5. And tomorrow we will do our analysis after the day has ended. So most likely around this time, I will try my best to start doing episodes every other day, or it would be nice if I could do it every day for you guys, just so it would be nice to talk about all these sports with you guys. And now, like I mentioned earlier, the women's side, we've already know who's going to be competing in the finals. You got Arina Sabalenka and Coco Gauff. These two have a history with each other. They've put on amazing matches, having recently faced each other in the Madrid final back about a month and a half ago. So it was a really good match. First set was a bit of you know, a big knockout punch for Coco Gauff as Arena, flew away in the first set and took that. And next thing you know, the second set went to a tie break, which, in tie breaks in tennis, anything can happen. All it takes is for one mistake to change everything. But Sabalenka was able to prevail, hold her ground, and take that Madrid title. So I wouldn't expect anything to be different. If I had to give my prediction for this match, I would say Sabalenka in 2 sets, just because recently over the past, year, I would say that she's had Coco Gauff's number a little bit. She did beat her, I believe it was in Wuhan. So she did beat her in Wuhan in 3 sets. She did lose to Coco in the WTA finals, but at that time, I would say at that time, Arena did know that she was going to be number one player after having just won the US Open, and then she just won Wuhan, which is I'm pretty sure a WTA Masters 1000 tournament. It is. And she had a lot of momentum up until that point. So I think maybe mentally her focus was already a little bit out of it. So that may have been a win for Coco just because Sabalenka already had secured that number one ranking. So maybe winning the WTA finals for her wasn't really big goals on her list. And then they face each other, like I said, back in early May, about a month ago now, in the Madrid final. Sabalenka wins that 2-0, like I said. And yeah, last time before Wuhan, which was back in the fall, in October of 2024, they faced each other in Australia, where Sabalenka prevailed 2-0 in two sets. And then recently before that, that's where Coco Gauff won her maiden Grand Slam at the US Open, having defeated Sabalenka in three sets. So I will expect this match to be a high level, intense final between, in my opinion, the two best players on clay this season. You have Coco, who's really, I would say she's overachieved in my opinion because, she's had a little bit of inconsistencies after Australia. Coming into Australia, she was on fire. She was on, I believe, she won over 10 sets in a row. I believe that she was going to make at least the semifinals, but she fell a little bit early to, I believe it was Paula Badosa. So I'm pretty sure that was in the quarterfinals. And then, yeah, Paula Badosa went on to face Arena. Arena advances to the finals, and then she comes up short against Madison Keys. And then I saw that Coco, she was a little bit inconsistent after Australia in the later stages of you know, the hard court season. And then coming into, the clay swing, you didn't really know what to expect from her. I mean, I don't recall her having, you know, a big, good run on clay. I did know that she made it to the semifinals of Roland Garros last year, so there is no surprise that she has made it this far. Only difference is that, this year she's made the Madrid final, she made the Rome final. She came up short in that one as well against Jasmine Paolini. And so she's overachieved a lot, and I would say she should be very proud of herself. I mean, she's shown that she can still, be a consistent player. I believe if her mind is right, if mentally she's focused, she can be a threat to any top 5, top 10 level player, really anyone that comes in her path. But regarding to Sabalenka, I mean, Sabalenka has been the most consistent player on the WTA tour. Next thing you know, she's already back in a Grand Slam final, having come up short, like I said, against Madison Keys in Australia, which in my opinion, I think it was a good Cinderella run for Madison Keys just because I saw Sabalenka. She was struggling, throughout those 2 weeks. She had a few games. I remember there was one match she had where no one was winning their serve. Next thing you know, it was just breaking back and forth, back and forth. So I think when you're still trying to find ways to adjust on the fly throughout 2 weeks of a Grand Slam, there's going to be some holes in your game where someone that knows how to play in that style can kind of expose it, and next thing you know, they can capitalize that. So I think Madison Keys, she was just on an incredible Cinderella run. I think she was able to beat Elena Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, and next thing you know, Arena, defending at that point two-time Australian Open champion. And it was a great run by her. All respect to her, being one of the first American woman to win a Grand Slam, I believe, since Coco at the U.S. Open in 2023. And I say just because it was a Cinderella run, just because, Rena, she did get her revenge against her at Indian Wells, which was an incredible defeat. She just, dismantled her and showed that she was still the number one player, that she can, you know, still beat someone even if she has a history of, coming up short against a specific opponent. So she showed a lot of mental strength there, a lot of resilience. And that's one of my main reasons for saying that it was a Cinderella run. And recently, I would say that Sabalenka has impressed me a lot. She just came up short in Rome against the famous Chinese player. Hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right, Qinwing Zhang. She, one of the most consistent players on clay in the last few years, having won the gold medal at Roland Garros last summer, and then entering this year with a little bit of an insurgence, a resurrection for this season because she had a little bit of trouble, in the Australian Open. And then after, she still had trouble finding her stride. But coming into the clay season, I think she found her rhythm again. She found her confidence, and she was able to defeat the number one player in Rome. Even though she did come up short against Coco in the semifinals, I think getting a win over the number one player can really raise some confidence and can be a green flag for things to come later on in the season. And I would say, Sabalenka showing good resilience against her, having, that recent loss and having to face her, just earlier this week to set up the semifinals match against Iga. So I think all those things, are green flags for Sabalenka. And then having a big history with Iga, who was a 3-time defending Roland Garros champion, having defeated Arena last year in both Madrid and Rome. You can't ignore those things. So I think this year Arena has ascended and just proving people that she is the number one player because of her mental resilience, her ability to stay in the match even if something goes wrong. So I would say I would take Arena in 2 sets for the final on Saturday. And yeah, that's been it's been an incredible clay season. I would say a lot of inconsistencies, like I was talking about earlier, a lot of, surprises, but I think that's what you can expect from the clay swing because clay can be a difficult surface to play on. The surface, always changes. It's not fully like a stable surface because, the clay can sometimes be imbalanced, due to all the sliding, the balls hitting the court. So a lot of factors play into it. So going into the grass court season, I'm very excited for it because personally, Wimbledon is my favorite tournament of the year, right in the middle of the summer. So it's going to be very exciting. If I had to give my prediction, who are some favorites going into Wimbledon for, I would say, the men's side, I would say Alcaraz, who is the defending champion. I mean, he's won 2023 and he won it last year, and both against Novak Djokovic. And that leads into my second favorite. I would have to put Novak Djokovic right behind Alcaraz just because he's raised his level recently. He's proving that he can still compete at a high level, regardless if he's 38 years old. I think he's proven to the media and to all those people interviewing, asking questions in those post-game press conferences that age does not matter. All that matters is that if he's healthy and he's mentally focused, he can still be competing at a high level. Third favorite, I would have to put Jack Draper in there just because Jack Draper has a history of doing well at Queen's Club. He has defeated Alcaraz on clay, and you want that history of beating Alcaraz, who he actually just beat at Indian Wells this year too, to win the Indian Wells, title later on. So I would say that Jack Draper is a player that has ascended this year. He is a player that will be playing in his home country of Great Britain at Wimbledon. So I would say having that crowd advantage, having that ability to play very good on clay against high level players, he should be considered a contender for that title. And fourth, I would say I would have to put Lorenzo Musetti because Musetti is just he's really good, I would say, on those natural surfaces, having made the Wimbledon semifinals last year. And you never know because all it takes is for a top player to lose early or even getting a lucky draw for someone like Musetti to really make a long run at Wimbledon. So I would say he is my fourth favorite entering Wimbledon. And I would say fifth, I would just have to put someone that no one really expects to make it far, but there are a few players that can make it far on that grass. So I would put these guys 2 and 2 together. So it's these two players, Tommy Paul and Alex de Minaur. I would say mainly just because de Minaur was playing very good at Wimbledon last year, and he has a history of performing very well on grass. So you can't count him out, but he does have a tendency to struggle against those top 5 opponents. But you never know, like I said, when draws come out, you get a lucky draw, and maybe some players, they fall out in surprising upsets. You never know what can happen. So I would say Demonor is up there for that contender. And then Tommy Paul, who just won Queen's Club last year and has a history of putting on good matches against these high ranked players. You can't count out Tommy Paul, who is now in the top 10. He is the number 8th ranked player in the world. And yeah, those two players, I think you can expect them to perform well at Wimbledon. So I'm going to leave the tennis there for now. Tomorrow is going to be a very exciting day. We have those two semifinals matchups. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we will talk about those games later on tomorrow night. And now moving on, this weekend I would say is filled with a variety of sports. You just, like I said, I'm watching the NBA Finals right now, which Oklahoma is up 35-28 on the Indiana Pacers with 9 minutes left in the second quarter. So I would say I'm not surprised that Oklahoma City has made it this far. Back in December, I told a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues, that the Thunder should be considered the favorite. I think them adding Alex Caruso last year in the offseason has made their team a little bit more versatile in terms of defensive and speed, because Alex Caruso has a lot of speed and he's a very good defensive player. So I think a player like him, who did win an NBA Finals with the LA Lakers, who has experience competing and going long in the playoffs, that would add some good depth and just good overall maturity to a young Thunders team. So all props to them for making it this far, being the most dominant team in the NBA this year. And the Indiana Pacers, I mean, you can't discredit them. They made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. There's no surprise for me that they, made it this far, even though I did expect either the Boston Celtics or the Cleveland Cavaliers to come out of the East to make it to the finals. But here we have, the Indiana Pacers, who just showed up when it mattered most in those big moments. Tyrese Halliburton making a name for himself. In my opinion, he is a superstar. I know people still want to discredit him and act like he's not a big name yet, but I say that this postseason has proven a lot, and you never know. All it takes is for maybe another powerful player like Giannis. You never know, because Giannis has thrown out some hints that he might be moving on from Milwaukee. So you never know what can happen if Giannis ends up going to a new team in the East, or might jump ship to a team in the West. That is yet to be determined. But I would say that he is a player that, you know, people need to keep an eye on going into the offseason, because whatever team is able to acquire him, they would most likely be a big playoff contender. So we'll see what happens. But all props to the Pacers. But I do have Oklahoma City winning this NBA Finals this year. But you never know. Sports is always filled with surprises. And besides NBA Finals, we got a really good UFC card this weekend, actually. So we have Merab Davishvili versus Sean O'Malley 2. I do believe that Merab will find a way to get the win again, having being on a long winning streak, and he's really shown why he deserves to be the champion at bantamweight. And I think he proved that very well against Umar Nurmagomedov. That was an incredible fight. Umar winning those first 2 rounds, and Merab finding a way to stay in that fight and finding a way to get those next 3 rounds, and being dominant and convincing the judges that he won that fight. And that's something about UFC. It doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. You can start off good in a fight, but you lose your rhythm, you lose your speed. You never know what can happen. And I would say Sean O'Malley, I don't see anything much that could really, be a threat to Merab besides, his incredible boxing and power. It could be one of those cases where, like, Conor McGregor catches Jose Aldo, something like that. But I don't really see it like that. I think Merab has enough experience of fighting in these high level, high intense championship fights where he knows that he has to be careful. So I would say that Merab will come away with the win. Other good fights, we have Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison. I will have to go with Kayla Harrison on this one, just because she has really good wrestling ability. And I mean, as much as I don't like to admit it, wrestling is one of the most crucial elements in mixed martial arts, especially UFC, as we've seen time and time again. A wrestler has a big advantage over someone who has minimal wrestling ability or even just pure boxing. Wrestling is something that I believe is essential to making a fighter complete. So I will have to go with Kayla Harrison on that one. And then we can look at the rest of the card. But those are the two, headliners for that, you know, UFC card. And we will touch base on the other three fights on the main card in a second. So before the Pena and Harrison fight, we have Kevin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. I do believe that Joe Pyfer will find a way to win this fight. I think Kelvin Gastelum is a fighter that maybe 5 years ago was a very, title contender, type fighter. But so many inconsistencies in his recent UFC fights have shown that I think his best days are behind him. And Joe Pyfer has been a fighter who's been, performing well lately. And I think he will find a way to come away with the win. We have Patrick Mix making his UFC debut, who is well known for his Bellator background, having only one loss on his record. And I believe it's 20 or 21 wins. Let me double check that for you guys. Yeah, 20 wins, one loss. So, yeah, we were right on that one. I do believe that he will find a way to make a statement against Mario Bautista. I know we have seen instances in the past where fighters like who are making their UFC debut from other promotions sometimes struggle. Maybe the lights are too bright for them. But seeing Patrick's attitude at this press conference, I would say I like what I see from him. I think the first step into achieving and making a good statement in your UFC debut is having a lot of confidence in yourself. So I would say that Patrick Mix will find a way to win that fight. And then before that, we have Kevin Holland versus Vicente Luque. This is a fight I think that will be very interesting for a lot of people. I think that Vicente Luque had a lucky win against Themba Garimbo back in December. I think it was a fight that he just found in a way to get that quick submission. And Kevin Holland, I mean, he's a ruthless fighter. He knows how to put on a show. He knows how to be in wars. And I can't disregard Vicente Luque's, brain injury in the past. I haven't really seen much from him for me to be convinced that he has moved on from that injury and he's back to being a top level fighter who can fight in those high intense situations, especially in a war type fight with a fighter like Kevin Holland. So I would say that Kevin Holland will come away with the win, but we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an exciting card. Hopefully a lot of good performances, memorable performances. And no surprise that this is a great UFC card just because UFC has a good history of putting on good fights in the summer. And then besides that, I would say that the other major thing that has caught my attention recently is Nations League with soccer, as we have a little bit of an international soccer swing going on right now post club season, right before the Club World Cup begins next Saturday on June 14th. We have Spain versus Portugal in the UEFA Nations League final. So I'm not surprised that Spain has made it to the final of this one, defending Euro champions, having won the title last summer. I will say that Portugal did surprise me with that win over Germany, having, beating a team that was playing in front of their home crowd, and Germany still having a good young core of consistent players that played very well in last year's Euro. I will say that Spain is on a 19 match unbeaten run. So I would say that Spain should be considered the favorite to take away that Nations League title on Sunday, which will be at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I think Lamine Yamal has proven that he's a young superstar in the making. He's already a superstar, not even a superstar in the making. He is a bona fide superstar, having performed incredibly well, not just for Barcelona, but also for Spain. And I think him winning this title, this Nations League title, will help propel his chances of being a Ballon d'Or contender. And also, not just for the Ballon d'Or, but also build some confidence going into next summer's World Cup because that, time goes by so fast and that World Cup is coming up around the corner. It's crazy, 20 it feels like the 2022 World Cup was just yesterday, but it's an exciting time obviously for soccer fans, football fans around the world. It's a very popular tournament. I believe it's the most popular sport in the world. I would put soccer, football, tennis, and basketball to be the three most popular sports in the world, in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of people will think differently, but considering that football and tennis have a large reach around the world, can't change my mind about that. And but I would say that Spain will come away with that title against Portugal on Sunday. I think Portugal they 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 know how to perform well. They're more of a defensive minded team, knowing how to keep games close from what I've seen in recent times. But I think with an attacking core like Spain, I think it's going to be too much, a little bit too overwhelming for Portugal's defense. So I have Portugal coming up short to Spain on Sunday. But overall, those are my main takeaways from, you know, sports that have been going on recently. Uh, as we're watching this NBA Finals game with 5 minutes and 45 seconds left in the second quarter, Indiana's still keeping this game close. They're not out of it. 41-34, 7-point game. I would say that Indiana just needs to find a way to get some stops, obviously, and just be more consistent with their shot making, because if you give Oklahoma City time to, stay in the lead and to have more offensive chances to put more points up on the board, it's going to be a long night, you know. Besides that, we still have the baseball season going on. Baseball obviously goes on all summer, going into the fall. I would say for the American League, leading contenders in the American League are the New York Yankees, with no surprise. I mean, they executed their plan B if the Juan Soto signing did not go well for them in the offseason, and they were able to acquire some good role players. Paul Goldschmidt, Corey Bellinger, Jason Dominguez has stepped up a little bit, but I think he still needs some more time to really prove himself. Hopefully, he could find his form by the time the postseason comes. But I would say in the American League, I don't see any other team right now that poses a threat. So if I had to make a prediction right now, which team will come out of the American League and make the World Series, I would say it's the New York Yankees again. And for the National League, it's still a little bit up for grabs, of course, because you have a lot of good teams there. I mean, the Dodgers, you can't discredit them, defending World Series champions. I think as their pitching rotation gets healthy going into the later part of the year, maybe they can be more of a dominant force. But for now, they're still a little bit vulnerable. But recently, the Mets put up some good games against them. So I think the Mets should still be recognized, having made the NLCS last year. I would say you have the Dodgers, the Mets, the Phillies are always making the playoffs, but for some reason they always come up short when no one expects them to. I mean, back in 2023, I thought they were going to come away with the World Series. They were having a great year, but that's what happens in baseball. So I would have Dodgers, Mets, Phillies, and the Padres for sure. Padres have been a decent, team so far. They started off the year really hot, slowing down just a little bit, but if they can maintain that winning consistency, I have no doubt that they will find a way to potentially make a good run in the playoffs. So yeah, that covers mostly what's on my mind right now about sports. I would say that I'm very excited for what's coming up. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, we have the Club World Cup. Personally, as a football fan, I'm not too too thrilled about it. I think it's just more of like a way of generating more views in the United States for the world of football. But for fans, I think it can be exciting, seeing a lot of fan favorited teams going up against teams that they usually can't go up against just because they play in different regions and different tournaments prevent them from playing against each other. So this will be a fun opportunity to see all these teams, club teams from around the world going up against each other. So we'll see what happens. But I think PSG should be considered a favorite having just won the UEFA Champions League almost a week ago against Inter Milan. So I would say that PSG, you can throw in Inter just because they made the Champions League finals, and Real Madrid, of course. Hopefully, Real Madrid just finds a way to, you know, get some rhythm going, especially now with their new head coach, Xabi Alonso. So we'll see what happens with that. And I just expect a European team to come away with this Club World Cup because in football, as much as we like to see some Cinderella stories from some teams, I think European football is just a little bit levels above against other regions around the world. But it will be fun to see some teams from Brazil and Argentina. You have Palmeiras, you have Botafogo, you have River Plate and Boca Juniors, 2-2 from Brazil and Argentina. So going up against maybe some MLS teams, you never know if they can upset a European team. That is yet to be seen, and we will watch that. A bold prediction I'll give you right now, actually. Very first game of the tournament, we have Al Ali from Egypt facing Inter Milan. So I do believe that Al Ali will find a way to beat Inter Milan. Not Inter Milan, I'm sorry. Inter Miami. Inter Miami from MLS. Al Ali, Inter Miami. I would say that Al Ali does have a way of, playing very well, scoring a lot of goals. I think, Egyptian, just on that side of the world, Egyptian, Saudi Arabian, Dubai, Qatar, just those types of countries, they do have a way of performing better, in my opinion, than MLS teams. Just because I saw when Inter Miami went and played Al Hilal and Al Nasser in the preseason last year in February, it was a tough run for them. So I would say that Al Ali will find a way to upset Inter Miami in that very first game of the tournament, but don't take my word for it. We'll see what happens. Overall, though, I'm gonna leave it there. It's been fun. This is our first episode. This is just a way of starting off something on this channel. I'm hoping that we can grow it into something bigger as time goes by. As much as I love sports, I think that's a good way to bring people together, and just there's always something new to talk about. So hopefully, I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode, and I most likely we won't have any viewers on this video for a long time, but for anyone that comes across this video, feel free to leave some comments about any sports that they find very interesting, or even some suggestions of what they would like to see on this channel, some sports being talked about, or different formatting advice as a person who's just starting out. So I'll catch you guys next time, and thank you so much for this first episode. There will be more to come. I'll see you guys tomorrow night with my post matches of analysis of the Roland Garros men's semifinals. And once again, we'll preview a little bit more in depth with the women's final featuring Arina Sabalenka and Coco Gauff. Take it easy, guys, and have a good night.